everyone, and welcome to LA Rams Central. This is episode 56. I'm actually going to have a timestamp in the description for this one to let people know where and when exactly we're talking about the Rams in our usually very long videos, although this one may be short, but I'm not going to promise anything because I always think that and then it ends up going over. So, really quick recap on the Thursday night game. Me and you both picked New England. I don't think there was really much of a surprise there. New England's defense looked okay. Tampa Bay's offense looked exactly like I thought it would. Everybody keeps talking about all these weapons, and they keep talking about how good Tampa Bay is going to be this year, but I heard the same thing about Jacksonville last year. Winston throws a boneheaded pick towards the end of the game that really hurt the football team. Um, the Buccaneers' defense looked great, but the offense couldn't produce points. They weren't playing the Chicago Bears, and they couldn't handle the Vikings on the road. Now they couldn't handle a weakened New England team at home. Not a lot to take away from the game except that Tampa Bay looks like they're this year's Jacksonville Jaguars. Sorry, but I called it. And the New England Patriots looked very beatable. That's what I pulled from the game, Eric.
Well, here's what I took from the game. Nick Folk couldn't hit a field goal to save his life. I think that turned the game every single way it possibly could. You see, it's all three of his field goals. Tampa Bay wins. But you know what? Field goal kicking is fun to game.
Right.
So, when you miss, it hurts. He had a chip shot 30-yarder and hit it wide left. Jameis looked tentative. I'm not going to argue that point with you one bit at all. Doug Martin looked fresh, and they might have the running back with a little boost. I thought he played extremely well. And on the flip side, Tampa Bay's defense kept them in the game. They were really good. Made some good plays. Brady has way too many weapons. When you're throwing to, they didn't even have Gronk in that game. Okay, no Gronkowski, which he had a thigh injury that crept up on him on Wednesday. But when you're throwing to Hogan, and then you're like, okay, Hogan, go sit on the bench. We'll bring in Amendola. Okay, Amendola, here's your throws to you, and then you're throwing to Cooks, and then you're throwing to Dwayne Allen, and then you're throwing to Dion Lewis and James White, and letting Gillis run the ball. Eventually you're going to wear down defense, which they did. So I thought the Buccaneers did have a shot at the end of the game. Winston in the red zone every single time, mainly because Mike Evans is being double covered. He went to this big tight end target in Cameron Brate. But you got to find somebody else. Tampa Bay just rely on two guys. Deshaun Jackson didn't show up until the fourth quarter. They have two tight ends they can use, Brate and Howard. You need to get Howard involved more. It really came down to Tampa Bay's field goal kicking, and just you couldn't get the last pass completed at the end of the game. Their defense, like I said, I've probably touched on this 3 times now, but their defense kept them in the game and did what they could. Patriots are tough, no matter if they're winning or losing. Patriots are tough. It was a big win for them, and Tampa Bay, what can you say? They're 2-2 at this point, so it's not like their season's over. Do I compare them to the Jaguars? No, because I think Tampa Bay's better than the Jaguars of last year. But again, time will tell. So I'm gonna stick by them, but there's other teams that are starting to distance themselves in the NFC South, and that's the Panthers and Saints. So we'll see what Tampa Bay can do to keep up with them.
First of all, New England put up 19 points in this game against the Buccaneers. You could sit there and say they have too many weapons, but Amendola is about as fragile as a crystal chandelier. Gronkowski has so many back problems that he probably feels like a 90-year-old man at the end of every week. And he has been pretty much a non-factor in 2017 so far, with the exception of one game. I look at New England and I see a football team that looks they look a lot like a 500 or worse football team right now. Their defense isn't getting any better, even with Devontae Hightower in there. Their offense, for all the weapons they have, they struggle on the road, and at home, their defense jumps up and bites them. We'll see how the rest of the season goes for New England, but in years past, you could always chalk up a win in your record if you went with the Patriots, and I don't think that's the case this year. We're going to do bold predictions at the end. I want to do our version of it. We're each going to do two, and I've got one that's probably going to blow you away. But New England, nonetheless, did get the win. They are still in second place in the AFC East, and we'll see how their season unfolds. The team that's in first right now, the Buffalo Bills, are at Cincinnati. Now, the Bengals' offense looked like it's clicking, but it was the Browns. So Buffalo's beaten some really good football teams this year, and they've hung close with other football teams this year. At 3-1, at the 1-3 Bengals, for me, it comes down to the Bills' defense. I think McDermott's done a phenomenal job with Buffalo's defense, and a lot like the Minnesota Twins in baseball. Everyone thought the Twins were selling at the deadline, and they ended up making the playoffs. Everyone, me and you included, thought Buffalo was tanking, and here they are atop the AFC East. Buffalo's made a believer out of me. I'm done picking against them. Even if they lose this week, which would be a bad loss, I don't think the body of work they put over the first quarter of the season should be ignored. I'm going to go with Buffalo over Cincinnati. I'm not going to give you a score because with Buffalo, who the hell knows? But I will tell you two things. Tyrod Taylor will keep the chains moving. Shady McCoy will keep the chains moving. And that Bills defense is going to stifle Cincinnati yet again at home.
Yeah, all week I've been leaning towards Cincinnati just because I think their offense has finally come alive. But I think they're going to find a way to shut down AJ Green. And I'm not ready to call Cincinnati's running game a three-headed monster with Hill, Bernard, and Mixon just yet. You've seen at least one guy of the three go off in each game. And when I mean go off, I mean like have the best game.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're only going to have that, but there's always been one guy who stood out. Bernard was that guy last week. But I think Buffalo's playing too well right now. I think that McCoy's going to be the biggest difference maker when I actually hope, or not hope, but when I look at it, it's, Jordan Matthews is out a month. So who are they going to throw the ball to besides Charles Clay? Well, that would be Zay Jones. I don't think he's ready to step up, but somehow Buffalo pulls it out. I think it's going to be close throughout the whole game. I think Buffalo pulls it out.
Yeah, me too. The New York Jets at the Cleveland Browns. I know the Jets are 2-2, but they haven't played anybody, and then they're not playing somebody again this week. I don't believe the Browns are as bad as they were a year ago. I think they'll find a way. I'll tell you this much, Eric. Hugh Jackson should be fired if they lose this game at home against the New York Jets. The Jets don't travel well on the road, and the Browns, after the stinker they laid last week, I'm going to go with Cleveland. And if they do lose this game, I'm telling you, I think Hugh Jackson is done at the end of the year.
I'm going to pick the Jets because they have more playmakers.
Because they have looked what?
They have more playmakers.
I guess.
I'm not sure what else you can look for in this game. Unless Kaiser is going to run the ball himself, because obviously Isaiah Crowell can't do that right now. And if Kaiser is also going to throw dump passes off to Duke Johnson, because he's done really well after the catch. I don't know who they're gonna throw the ball to.
Yeah, I mean
Coleman's been out. He's out for another 5-6 weeks. Britt, you can't trust him. Their tight end Njoku, I believe that's how it's pronounced. He's okay, but he's not going to set the world on fire. Give me Jimmy McCown, this could be a turnover fest. Jimmy McCown, Robbie Anderson, Jalen Marshall, Austin Safarian-Jenkins, and Bilal Powell, and I'll take my chances with the Jets defense.
Well, I think
with more playmakers.
I think if the Browns do decide to run Duke Johnson more this week and rely on him, I think the Browns have a chance to move the chains a little more consistently. Myles Garrett is finally making his debut. I guess his boo-boo has finally healed. We'll see how he plays. And if he doesn't have a big game against that sorry sack of Jets offensive line, I think we can start to consider looking at him as a work in progress. I don't like calling a player a bust after 1 year, but he certainly seems fragile. And if you can't put pressure on this Jets quarterback, who's a sack monster because that's basically sits there like a statue. He has the mobility of a statue, and when you hit him, he breaks like glass. So all signs are there to have a big day for Myles Garrett. But that's why I'm going with Cleveland. In a turnover fest, I think the Browns' field goal kicker is a little bit better than the Jets right now. Carolina at Detroit. Who are you taking, E?
I'm taking the Lions at home. I just like what the Lions have been doing this year. What they did in New York 2 weeks ago, and on the road again in Minnesota. Even though the win in Minnesota wasn't pretty, hey, you get out there with an ugly road win, hey, it's just as good as a pretty road win. But give me the Lions in this one. I think Stafford has a big game. I also think it's going to be a high scoring thing. Two teams reach the mid to higher 50s, maybe even into the 60s. That's how I view this game. I think that defense is going to be optional. Cam and his boys are going to put up numbers. Cam looked great at New England. I think the Lions defense is better than New England by a bunch. But I think the Lions are going to be too tough to handle at home.
I have a hard time picking a football team that has one player on their football team and nothing else. I've not been a fan of Detroit for a long time. I think Stafford's a great quarterback. But if we're to the point in the National Football League where all you need is a quarterback to win football games, then maybe all these fans burning their season tickets and canceling the NFL Sunday ticket are onto something. This is not a sport that one man should be able to dictate the terms of the season. So for me, or of the game, to me, stopping the Lions is pretty simple. Dare them to run and stop Stafford. Tell me one of your running backs can beat us, because I don't believe it. Play with a three-man front, play a nickel defense to a dime defense, maybe even a quarter defense all day long, and I think that'll do it. Now, obviously, the Panthers aren't going to do that. They're going to do their normal defense because the NFL coordinators and head coaches are dumb as a box of rocks. But even still, I just think, who does he throw to? Who does he throw to? I think the Panthers secondary is better than the Lions wide receivers. I think the Panthers linebackers are better than the Lions tight ends. And I think the Panthers defensive line is better than the Lions offensive line. The only one I think is good on that offense is Stafford. So, I could see Carolina winning this one, 24-21, 27-24 in overtime. I think unfortunately it's going to be a close game because that's the state of the NFL, but I just don't know where where Detroit gets the offense to pull it out against a much better defense. And this isn't the Vikings defense, which held them to 14 points. Okay, I think the Vikings defense is a little bit not as good, but they're close to being as good as the Panthers. They're not the Cardinals defense. The Cardinals defense is a joke at times. I know their no-fly zone did really good, but, opening game jitters. I shouldn't say the Cardinals defense is a joke. It's not a joke, but it's on the field a lot because of its offense. And that's not going to be the problem with the Panthers offense. So, the only good football team they really beat so far on their schedule, outside of Minnesota, which was a defensive game, not an offensive game, was the Cardinals, and that's because they had the Cardinals' defense on the field the whole game. So, long and short, I'm going with Carolina, but I think it'll be a good game. But I don't see how one guy beats 11. I know. I just don't see how one guy beats 11.
Well, I think Detroit found the running game with Abdullah, and we'll see what he's able to accomplish this week. If he does it 2 weeks in a row, I'm sure it's a small sample size. I get that, but you know what? You only need a small sample size when you play one day a week.
No, you're right. Okay, San Francisco and Indy. Basically, for me, these are pretty even teams. 49ers lost to the Cardinals in overtime in Arizona. The Colts lost in overtime to the Cardinals at home. So common opponent there's pretty similar. I think the 49ers have a running game. I think Indianapolis doesn't. There's still no Andrew Luck. And I think that the 49ers offense showed they can move the ball against a quality defense. They did against the Rams. So I'm going to go with San Francisco in this one. But I'm not confident in the pick, but I do think it's going to be a close game. And I think the difference in the game is going to be Hyde. I said Gore. Hyde. And I think the 49ers defense will be the difference in this game.
I'm going to go Indy. Indy's at home. I like their chances of at home and winning more so than they were on the road. They looked atrocious in Seattle. I think the overtime loss that the 49ers had the week prior is going to take a little wind out of their sails. I think they're going to see Brissett have a big game. Not necessarily Gore or Marlon Mack on the ground. I think Brissett's going to be your leading rusher. But I think you're going to see Hilton and Moncrief have big games. Not sure about Jack Doyle. He's been a monster in the middle, but I think you're going to get over 50 yards receiving, which is a plus from Dante Moncrief. I think Indy's a little bit better than San Francisco. Don't get me wrong. I won't be surprised if San Francisco goes in there and waxes them and wins. Maybe not waxes, but comes out with a victory. I'm just going to take the home team in this game. If it were in San Francisco, I'd probably take the Niners. But I'm going to stick with Indy at home on this one.
Okay.
Plus, Peyton Manning's going to be in the house, your boy. So they just unveiled a statue Saturday before the game. So they're going to want to put on a decent show for him.
Peyton Manning's going to be in the house?
He might be, yeah. They unveiled the statue Saturday night.
Sweet. Then I got a final score for you. 49ers 26, Colts 20 with a pick six at the end of the game, just to give him a good memory of Peyton Manning and what he used to do in Indy in the postseason.
Wouldn't it be funny if the Colts only scored 18 points in the game?
And won?
Or lost?
Yeah, that would be. Yeah, whatever.
They scored 18 last week, so
yeah,
it's possible.
Yep. And the 49ers gave up 18 last week and lost. So
that's right.
Tennessee at Miami. I think this is a revenge game for the Titans. I think they're going to go down to South Beach and they're gonna treat Jay Cutler like his diet, just abuse him, and just beat the heck out of him. I think it's going to be a lopsided victory. I know you got lucky and beat me in fantasy football this week, Dick, but I would say you pick up the Titans D, you might put up 45 points. Maybe I should have started Deshaun Watson because I'm a douche canoe.
Well, I'm not going to argue with anything you said there. However, Mariota is game time decision. So if he doesn't play, I could see Miami finally getting their second win of the season.
No way.
But if Mariota does play, I think it's going to be a long day for Miami's defense.
First of all, Mariota's not even going to be their starting quarterback this week. It's going to be Jay Cutler with all the picks he's going to throw to Titan defenders. He's going to have more completions to Tennessee Titans than he is to Miami Dolphins. I'm telling you right now.
Well, I don't know. Are you confident that the Titans will win if Matt Castle is your starter?
Yes, because Jay Cutler's their starter.
I mean, that is true. And having it through 8 years with him, I have no rebuttal to that, except you're right.
All right, then.
I really don't. But I would take Jay Cutler over Matt Castle. That's just me, though.
Yeah, it is. It is literally just you. What's that?
I said that would be like me asking you if you wanted Jay Cutler or Charlie Whitehurst.
Charlie Whitehurst. All right, so you're going.
I think Tennessee's got the better defense to keep the Dolphins in line. I am actually going to go with the Titans in this game.
All right.
I think they're still that talented that they can beat the Dolphins. Dolphins prove that they can beat one bad team. The Titans are not a bad team. Titans are ticked.
Look,
after getting shellacked in Houston, they're going to come out with a big chip on their shoulder.
Yeah, they're not going to let that happen twice. Look, on behalf of all the Dolphin fans, all 12 of them, thank you for trying to make it look like Miami could win this game, but it's just not going to happen. I'm sorry. And I'm glad you came to your senses because you were worrying me with that pick. Chargers at New York. If this is a battle for LA, if this was a boxing match, they would have called it in the first round due to San Diego's inability to throw a punch. This is KO already. The Rams are about to go 4-1. We'll get to that later. The Chargers are about to drop to 0-5 because, again, West Coast to East Coast is tough to do. You're in a very angry Giants football team who's lost 2 games in the last few seconds. These are 2 football. This may end up a tie. Like, the kickers may both end up missing field goals to cost them the win, and they may end up in a 20-20 tie. I know that Eli Manning is 0-2 all-time against Phillip Rivers, but in New York, fall is here. The weather's going to be a little more brisk, not necessarily cold, but I just think you've got an angry group of Giants, and they've got way more to play for right now in New York than the Chargers do, because the Chargers already know when they play in their stadium, it's a home game for the other team. So, it's not like they have a fan base that they're trying to support or, keep in line. At this point, they don't have a fan base. So it's going to be New York all day. I'm picking the Giants in a blowout. And by a blowout with these 2 teams, I mean like a 6-point victory. So in other words,
this is New York Giants all day, every day against this Charger team.
Yeah.
So the Chargers traveling east for a 1 p.m. Eastern kickoff. Yeah, give me the Giants. Eli Manning's going to have a field day throwing it back up and Shepard and even maybe Brandon Marshall.
Yeah, I think so too. Arizona at Philadelphia. I think the Cardinals football team is in bad shape. I don't know. I honestly don't know how you get a win here if you're Arizona. Like, they can't stop the run as effectively as they did before. They just lost their best pass rusher. Carson Wentz is going to open up the passing game, which is going to free up LeGarrette Blount to run all day, every day. You're going from West Coast to East Coast for a 10 o'clock game. I just see Philadelphia winning this thing by 14 points. I'm going to say 27-10, 27-13 kind of football game. I just don't know how Arizona keeps up with a much better and much more talented Philadelphia Eagles football team.
Yeah, I think the Eagles win this game. Cardinals lack aggressiveness and firepower. Every now and then you'll get a drive where they look unstoppable, but Philadelphia's defense is going to be too much. What's going to hurt Philly is going to be their run game. Smallwood's out. So, they got one, and So he may carry the rock 30 times. Who knows? But if he carries the rock 30 times, he might have 150 yards.
Yeah. Well, I just think the loss of Goldston hurts the Cardinals. I mean, it takes away their best pass rusher. And now you've got two guys playing out of position, an outside linebacker playing middle linebacker, and a middle linebacker who's used to being able to play a combination of safety and outside linebacker in Dale Buchanan is now forced to play middle linebacker. So, or play outside linebacker. So I don't know how this one works out for Arizona. Goldston is a bad injury for that football team, and their offensive line is starting to look a little porous. So I agree with you. All right, buddy. Pittsburgh and Jacksonville, take it away.
Pittsburgh in a rout. I can't pick Jacksonville here at all. Jacksonville on the road. Well, we've seen Jacksonville on the road. They lost to the Jets. When that happens, you go into Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh had a great win last week in Baltimore. Yeah, in front of their home crowd, expect Pittsburgh to get them involved early and often, and you're going to see another monster game from Le'Veon Bell. And I also think you're going to see a lot of passes sent over to Antonio Brown's way, kind of shut him up and keep him happy. I think you're going to see him in excess of 20 targets. That's how I think the Pittsburgh offense is going to be. Jacksonville's going to turn the ball over too many times.
Look, I'm not going to go political here, Eric, but I am going to bring something up, and this is my concern. The biggest backlash from any fan base during this whole anthem deal came from Pittsburgh Steelers fans. I saw Steelers fans burning their season tickets. I saw Steelers fans burning their paraphernalia by a much larger clip, 3-1, and I watched like 50 videos. By a 3-1 clip, they were Steelers fans. I don't know if the fans are going to show up to this game.
You know what? I'll tell you why they will. They beat Baltimore last week. A win can cure a lot. I'm not going to say anything, but a win can cure a lot. If they would have came home and lost to Baltimore, I would have sided with you on this. But a big win against a division opponent can cure a lot. I mean, I know you can never get your season tickets back after you burn them. Great, whatever. You're done with football. Somebody else will sit in those seats. I mean, they really can't, but
right.
Somebody. But
and I think you're being look. Be careful what you say there. I think the fans may misunderstand what you're saying. Like beating Baltimore doesn't. Somebody burns their tickets because you're protesting the anthem. A victory over an okay football team in the division isn't going to suddenly make them love their team again. Like they're upset for a legitimate reason.
No, it's going to take time. But I think that, as the weeks go on, the backlash gets less and less.
Well, according to the numbers,
I'm not saying it's going to be eradicated this week. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that a lot of it has to do with how your football team performs. And I think with the big win last week that they got, I think that, you're not going to hear as many boos.
I think, for me, I'm picking Pittsburgh, but I think you're going to see a rather empty stadium. Watch the media not show the stadium at all. They're going to do the old 1980s view at Anaheim Stadium where it's at an angle, cutting off the crowd and showing the entire sideline and field, but never really panning to the crowd. And they may pan to the crowd at the end of quarters where they could sit there and go, oh, fans were at the concession stands. I'm telling you, I may be wrong on this, but I think Pittsburgh has three things they're fighting in this game. A Jacksonville football team, themselves, because there's clearly discontention still in the locker room with all of this, and an angry fan base. And that's tough to do. Now I'm picking Pittsburgh because they have Jacksonville. If this was any of the other 31 teams or 30 teams in the NFL that they were playing, I would be picking the other team. But because it's Jacksonville, I think that there's enough there to do it. But, Jacksonville gets to the quarterback and Roethlisberger's stationary. And, Le'Veon Bell finally got off the schneid, and he's going to need to do it again this week. Antonio Brown is going to go off. There's no doubt about that. But, you know, it depends. I don't know. This game is the one game I'm nervous as heck about. Like, if Pittsburgh loses this game, I'm not going to be overly shocked. In fact, my gut's telling me to pick Jacksonville and start Watson over Roethlisberger this week. But my head is telling me something very different. So I'm nervous about this game. And I think you are a little too confident in the Steeler fan base, and I don't think you understand just how pissed off they are. So
Well, I'll tell you what. I get this game where I'm at, so I will watch it.
yeah,
I'm picking Pittsburgh with full confidence, and if they lose, I'll come on here when we recap, and, I have no problem saying that I was wrong about it.
look, I'm picking Pittsburgh too. I just have a gut feeling about Jacksonville. But if you are going to watch that game, I want to know what the crowd response was. I want to know how the stadium looked as far as capacity. And I want to know how they played. So I'll let you recap that game, okay?
Sure.
All right. Baltimore at Oakland. I don't care who's playing in Oakland. I'm going with Oakland. I think Marshawn Lynch is going to run all over that Ravens defense. I think that Amari Cooper is going to get significantly more targets. And I think the Raiders defense is going to get a few turnovers and maybe even a touchdown on their own. I'm going to go with Oakland over Baltimore. I think Baltimore, what we talked about in the beginning of the year, with all the injuries and all the problems in Baltimore, that they're not a very good football team, well, you're going to see it right now. I'm picking Oakland.
Yeah, as much as I would like to pick Oakland, I just don't trust DJ Manuel at all. Give me Baltimore in a close game. I'm contradicting myself here, but I can't get behind a backup quarterback. Yes, I know it's the Titans, but I just can't do it. Not with Oakland's defense. Baltimore hasn't shown me anything yet, and they've been disastrous since London. But I think they each have a win on the road. I may eat this later, but
so you're eliminating.
I don't think EJ Manuel's the quarterback to get Oakland out of their what I think is a free fall.
So you think Oakland's out of the playoffs?
I think if Carr is not back in 2 weeks and it's closer to 6, I think you can kiss the playoffs goodbye.
Wow. Okay. We'll see. Green Bay at Dallas. I'm a believer that the Dallas Cowboys are a good football team and that the Rams are just better. The media is starting to talk about the Rams more, but it's kind of it's a weird dynamic to listen to. I've heard people discredit the Rams win, saying, well, maybe the Cowboys, like I heard this today from Damashek on NFL Network, which I can't stand him. He's a Steeler homer who's just a complete idiot that, I'm sorry, but he doesn't know football. He knows about as much as the average fan, but certainly not enough to be considered an analyst. But at any rate, he said, are we going to look back at the end of the year and say, yeah, the Rams beat a really good Cowboy team, or are we going to look back at week 5 and say, this is when we first realized Dallas maybe wasn't as good as we thought? And I tend to think it's the latter, or it's that one and not the latter. And I'm just like, okay. As usual, the Rams get a big win and there's a reason. The Colts, well, they were a JV team. San Francisco, well, they gave up 39 to the 49ers. Now they beat, Dallas, and it's, well, maybe Dallas isn't that good. I think Dallas is this a statement game for the Cowboys. I think they're going to get to Aaron Rodgers. I think they're going to get turnovers against Aaron Rodgers. I think their offense is going to run the ball all day long, every day, all over their defense. And I think they're going to expose Green Bay's defense for what they are, which is an average to mediocre defense that's had the benefit of a very soft schedule to start the year. They had one really good offense they went up against, and the Atlanta Falcons put up more points against them than they have any of their other opponents they played so far this year. And I think that speaks volumes. You played a Seattle Seahawks football team that's offensive line is a lot like a wet paper towel, not very strong, in case you were wondering. I don't even know what was their other victory? Seattle.
I'm sorry.
I'm trying to think who Green Bay beat. Chicago, give me a break.
Green Bay beat the Bears. They beat the Bengals.
Okay, in overtime.
And they beat Seattle.
Yeah. So I'm not going to consider those teams offensive juggernauts by any means. Now they're running into a buzzsaw. I'm telling you right now, Ezekiel Elliott will have over 150 yards total offense. He may have 200, depending, but he's going to have over 150 yards of total offense, 2 touchdowns. Dak Prescott will have over 250 yards passing with 2 touchdowns, and the defense is going to get to Aaron Rodgers, whether that be a sack, hurry, or knockdown 10 times in this game. Cowboys win big.
Cowboys win big, huh?
Yeah, I'm thinking 35-21.
Ghosts still haunt the Cowboys and that completion in the playoffs that got Green Bay into field goal range. Elliott could have a big game, but you still got Aaron Rodgers on the other side. And I know they're hurting with offensive linemen. Doesn't look like Devontae Adams will play. Ty Montgomery's not going to play. And with all those injuries, I think I'd be picking Dallas. I just think that Dallas is vulnerable. Dallas is going to play like their season's on the line, and mistakes can happen easier that way. Again, the Packers are going to sell out to stop Zeke. So again, make Dak Prescott beat them through the air, and Green Bay wins by 6.
Okay. It's going to be a shame when I beat you this week rather badly. I don't know what you're thinking on that pick. You just said they have none of their weapons except for Jordy Nelson. And what?
Well, no, they have Jordy Nelson. You could put guys with paper bags over their head, and Rodgers would still hit them for completions. That's how precise he is. I mean, okay, yeah, Devontae Adams, he's a big target, but there's still Randall Cobb in the slot, and there's Geronimo Allison, who had the reception against Cincinnati, put them in field goal range for the win in overtime. So they still have weapons. They have Martellus Bennett. If they get Martellus Bennett involved, and he goes over the middle and he gets past Sean Lee, and they,
Okay, but Eric, so far through the. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead and interrupt.
Don't be a dick. Finish. Go ahead. I'll interrupt you in a minute.
No, I just think that Green Bay is more explosive than Dallas, and I know Dallas can control the clock with getting Zeke in holes and getting first downs. I get that. I think Green Bay can if Dallas gets the ball first, takes it downfield, takes 7 minutes off the clock, okay, scores a touchdown. They're up 7-0. Green Bay scores in 3-4 minutes, then it's tied up. It's like, okay, now you got to go back out there and do it again. Eventually, it wears on you. I'm just saying. That's why I'm picking Green Bay.
Well, okay, but
I hate myself for it.
But here's what I don't understand. You're acting like Green Bay's offense this year is a juggernaut. Okay, when they don't play the Bears and when they're not scoring touchdowns in garbage time, they've struggled this year. They've struggled mightily. The Bengals' defense, which, to be fair to Cincinnati's defense, has been solid all year long. But are you really going to tell me that the Dallas Cowboys' defense isn't better than the Cincinnati Bengals? They're not better than the Atlanta Falcons? Is that what you're saying? Because you seem to be forgetting that Dallas has 11 guys on the other side of the ball, and they have 4 really good defensive linemen that can put pressure on a quarterback, and an offensive line that looks more like a mash unit than an actual offensive line. And while Rodgers may be able to do all those things, running for his life for 4 quarters is going to take a lot out of him. Go back to the Seattle game. The difference between the Seahawks and the Cowboys is Dallas has an infinitely better offensive line, and a much better running game. And I'm sorry, but either
Rodgers is good on his feet.
right, but not for
Get
4.
out of the pocket. If Rodgers starts rolling right against Dallas, they're dead.
In the first quarter, he might get a couple of touchdowns. That's why I said 35-21. But if he's doing that for 3 quarters, he's going to throw a pick. He's going to get tired. He's going to throw an errant pass. He's going to get rocked. And when you're getting hit 10 times through the course of the game, it wears on you. Plus, it's not like Dallas is going to go 3 and out and just let it be the Aaron Rodgers show. So what happens when they're down 21-7 and Green Bay has to throw the ball? And they can't stop the Cowboys' pass rush. And he's not going to have the crowd in his favor to get that induced offsides and then launch a deep one. And I'm sorry, but the Cowboys' corners right now are better than the Packers' wide receivers. Look, I hate the Cowboys, ABD, but, unless Green Bay for Green Bay to win this game, and I'm not saying it's out of the question, Green Bay is going to have to move the chains, they're going to have to keep their defense off the field, and they're going to have consistent drives like the Rams did. And they're going to need to be able to respond. If they can't do those things, they're not going to win this football game. And yes, you are correct. Aaron Rodgers is capable of all of those things. But, it's not the same thing. Their offensive line is a lot like the Cardinals' offensive line right now. Except not as good, which sounds retarded, but whatever. You get the point. I mean, I hate this game because it's 2 teams I don't like. It's 2 teams I respect. It's 2 teams I respect, but I told you when Green Bay beat Seattle that we were going to hear about how overrated Green Bay is week in and week out. All I hear is Aaron Rodgers. Like the Lions, you can't do it with one guy. And when your defense is suspect and you're on the road where you don't play well against what looks to be a better football team, I just don't know how you make that pick.
I made the pick, so deal with it.
All right, I guess I'm trying to talk you out of it because is what I'm saying making sense at least, E?
Yeah, it makes sense. It's just what I see on my side.
Fair enough. All right. Kansas City, Houston. I don't know if I should start Watson or Roethlisberger. Part of me wants to start Roethlisberger on my fantasy team because Watson, as great as he looked last week, this is the Chiefs. But I thought the Tennessee defense was good too. I don't think Kansas City's going 17-0 or 19-0. So this could be a loss for them, but they're a good football team. I don't want to pick them against them. You know what I mean? Break this one down because this is a really tough game.
Well, it's going to come down to Houston's run defense against Kareem Hunt. You're seeing a completely different Alex Smith this year. One who's not afraid to go deep. Where I give Houston the edge is that they're at home. And they're not in Loud Arrowhead.
Yeah.
So, this is the game to watch Deshaun Watson very closely. Kansas City's coming in with such a swagger right now. The only undefeated team left in the NFL. I don't think they're going to go the whole season undefeated. Okay, that's not what I'm getting at. I'm just pointing out an obvious standing where the Chiefs stand. But if Kareem Hunt gets going in that first quarter, yeah, I like the Chiefs getting through that game and coming out and win. But I like Houston at home. What they did to Tennessee last week, I can't take that out of my head. And momentum's only good for however long you can sustain it for. And I know going from last week to this week, how much momentum can carry over into practice and all that stuff. You play the game, you would know that better than I would. It's not like baseball where you play every day and you have momentum. You can win 22 straight like Cleveland did in the regular season.
Yeah.
But I give the edge to Houston at home. I think you're going to see a big game from Clowney and Watt. And Houston comes out of this. I think it's prime time for Deshaun Watson, and he's ready.
Yeah, I've been back and forth on this one. I'm going to go with Houston. I may text you and my pick may change before the Sunday games begin. But I'm picking Houston because I just think going on the road, they're coming off an emotional win, a great win. Both teams are. But for me, the only reason I'm picking Houston is there's no Barry. And this is a game they're going to need him because they've got two really good wide receivers now, and Fuller being back and Deshaun Hopkins looking like he's back on track. They've got a running game, and they've got a mobile quarterback, and this is really where they needed Eric Berry, and I think this is going to be the first time they feel his absence. It won't be the last time I go against the Chiefs, and it probably won't be the last time it burns me, but right now when I look at this game from a totality standpoint, I can't get the Houston 57 points out of my head either at home against a good Titan football team. And, Kansas City's coming in, ready to make a point. And I know they're like, keep disrespecting us. We'll keep knocking those pins down. And this football team could very well go 9-10, 8-0. But this is the most logical loss along the way so far. I picked them over Washington because they were home. And for that same reason, I'm picking Houston at home. I just think these are two evenly matched football teams. This is going to be a fun Sunday night game to watch. But I'm going to go with Watkins and the Houston Texans over Kansas City for now. I will text you and let you know if that changes, and we'll talk about that on the recap. Monday night, Minnesota at Chicago. We need a score on this one, as you know. Go ahead and take it away, E.
All right. Well, in case you hadn't heard, finally, Mitchell Trubisky is making his first career start. Now we won't have to wait, now we don't have to keep on hearing about 13 career police starts and all ends Monday night. Now, the Bears still do not have wide receivers. I mean, Kendall Wright and Marcus Wheaton. Zach Miller, I think you're going to see a lot of Trubisky to Miller in this game. I think he's going to have a huge game. But what you get with Trubisky is that he gets Howard and Cohen in the backfield, and Trubisky is actually a lot more fluid on his feet than Glennon. I'm going to throw a great stat out at you. The Bears are 14-2 against Minnesota at home in the last 16 games, dating back to 2001. Minnesota last one in Chicago in 2015. The interesting scenario for the Vikings on this is that Sam Bradford may be coming back to play. Now, we all know what happened to the Vikings last week. Not only did they suffer a loss of Lions, but they suffered the loss of Dalvin Cook for the year. And rumor has it that McKinnon and Murray are not 100% going into this game. Now, don't get me wrong. I would take Thielen and Diggs and Rudolph over what the Bears have any day. But I think the crowd's going to be pumped. The horrors of coming into Soldier Field for the Vikings continue. And the Bears win 27-20.
You're going 27-20 Bears. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I think they're. I know Minnesota has a great run game, but Trubisky's legs are going to make the difference. Not necessarily running, but moving out of the pocket, not taking sacks. Three steps from the line of scrimmage, and that's going to create holes for Cohen and Howard.
Hold on a minute.
Let's see you, Anthony.
Well, Zimmerman's all-time record against rookie quarterbacks is 8-6. Um, I think the reason we all thought the Bears were going to be at the bottom of the division is because they're not a good football team. Now, you had the Bears winning what?
27-20.
I think the Vikings corners are amazingly underrated. I think that the Vikings front seven is constantly overlooked. They held Matthew Stafford to 14 points last week. And the only reason they lost is because the running back was hurt. You've got a rookie quarterback with 13 collegiate starts. That's right, I went there. At North Carolina, a program that isn't exactly considered a juggernaut. They rank right up there historically with Wyoming in football. All right.
Yeah, but they played better teams than Wyoming.
Well, and that is true. However, you've got to learn a whole new system. If I learned anything under Jared Goff, I learned that when you have an ancient coach with an ancient philosophy who tries to conform the quarterback to the position, it doesn't bode well your rookie year. Rookie quarterbacks in general struggle for three reasons, and people don't understand this. The speed from practice to the game is something they have to get accustomed to. And that makes a difference because instead of getting a full second to make a decision, you're getting, 0.8 of a second to make that decision. And that could be the difference between you completing your throwing motion or getting your arm knocked out and the ball coming loose. I think the Chicago Bears are in a bad position here. I think they had no choice to start Trubisky because I do agree with what Herman Edwards said, which is when you turn the ball over, I can get a rookie to do that, which I think was really smart on Herman Edwards' part because it really does explain why the Bears, I think, pulled the trigger on this move to go with Trubisky. And I think the other thing that the Bears are in a bad position is the fans think that Trubisky is going to save the season because, as you mentioned earlier, Eric, and I didn't mention this before when we did this, you had mentioned that the fans were like, the Bears are going 9-7, they're playoff bound, and you were like, how are you thinking this way? So now you've got this rookie quarterback who you know isn't going to lead you to a 9-7 record because you don't have a 9-7 football team. I just think all of that is problematic. My score for this game is 28-0 Vikings. It's not that I think Trubisky's a bad quarterback. It's not that I think that he's incapable of winning football games because, as I said before when we did this, and we have to refilm because my computer's stupid, we had this whole show wrapped up and then missed this pick and the Ram pick. Troy Aikman lost his first game of his professional career 28-0 to the New Orleans Saints in 1989. So I don't think it's going to, that's it, Trubisky's a bust. And I'm not going to do to him what they did to Jared Goff. I'm going to do with him what I'm doing with Jared Goff, which is giving him time. He's going to need more than a year or 2 years. This mentality that everyone comes in and they're Matt Ryan is dumb. People forget Aaron Rodgers didn't see the field until, year 3 or 4 of his career?
Yeah.
So, this mentality that they got to come in and win right away, it's stupid and it's ignorant because it takes time to get caught up with the speed of the game, and I think it's doing a disservice to the players. But I just don't know who he throws to. I don't know what he does if the running game gets stuffed. And look, the Vikings are going to put 8 guys in the box and stop Howard and say, okay, Trubisky, beat us. Because I think our corners are better than your wide receivers. And maybe Trubisky gets him in field goal range with his legs and a good pass here or there, and I'm wrong, and they end up not getting shut out. I think it's far more likely that he gets hit and fumbles or throws a pick or whatever, and the Bears are snowballing into. Look, they got shut out by Tampa, and Tampa's not as good of a football team as the Minnesota Vikings. And the Vikings held the Detroit Lions to 14 points, who are infinitely a better offense than the Chicago Bears. So, that's where I'm looking at this thing going 28-0. And I'm not trying to, throw a wet towel over your parade, so to speak, but I just don't know what Trubisky or how Trubisky gets out of this.
No, you don't have to explain yourself.
So, well, listen, I'm going to make this note because this was wrong. So at 58-15. Okay. Sorry, taking a little bit of time. We're going to talk about the Rams now and wrap this show up. So before we get into the Ram pick, I want to cover what I covered at the end because I thought it was interesting. But I do find it awesome to watch Marshall Faulk because Marshall Faulk and Eric Dickerson both identify themselves as Rams, and they follow this team. And I thought it was funny because last week in the Ram-Cowboy game, when it got to Marshall Faulk to do the picks, they got to Marshall, and he's like, what do you mean, Marshall? You know who I'm picking. Move on. You know who I'm picking. And they're like, you're picking the Rams? Like, of course you know who I'm picking. Move on. He was the only one to pick the Rams. And I think it's cool to see a guy who spent 5 years in Indy and 6 years in St. Louis and identifies still, though, more as a Ram than a Colt. And then you've got Eric Dickerson, who spent 4 years with the Rams and 5 years with the Colts and still comes back and says, I'm a Ram. There's a loyalty to this organization that I think is fun to watch. And maybe there's something to how the organization runs itself. I don't know, but I do find it really the only other team that I see that has that kind of support from players that leave and come back or leave and still identify themselves as that team is the Dallas Cowboys. But getting into this game against Seattle, did I not say in the beginning of the year that the Seattle Seahawks get lazy about this time under Pete Carroll? And are you not seeing it? Are you not seeing it?
No, I am seeing it.
Are you? Go ahead.
No, all I was going to say was that Seattle doesn't get lazy on defense. They get lazy on offense. And that's where you see it more. And I don't know if it's because of the lack of talent on the offensive line, but it just seems like Wilson has happy feet when that offensive line breaks out early.
DeMarco Murray's 77-yard touchdown run wasn't the Seahawks being lazy?
Well, okay. One example.
The Titans game.
I mean, you're gonna have breakdowns every now and then on defense, but to say that they're lazy on defense, they've been tough on defense the last few years.
And they're also older, and they're injured. Look, here's what happens. You look at film, and what ends up happening when you're a cocky team like the Seahawks is you stop looking at film of your opponent, and you start looking at film of your opponent's opponent. And you're like, oh, I'm better than that Cowboys corner. I wouldn't have messed up on that coverage. I'm better than that Cowboys linebacker. I wouldn't have let the running back break that tackle. Oh, I'm better than that guy on the Cowboys defensive line. I would have beaten that offensive lineman and gotten to the quarterback, and that play never would have happened. And you stop watching your opponent. I've seen it. As a coach for 15 years, I know what I'm talking about. It's a problem. And then you've got a coach like Pete Carroll who's all about, pumping his players up and saying how great they are. So they're going to go into the film room and he's going to say, guys, you're not as bad as the Dallas Cowboys. You're so much better, which is only going to reinforce that thinking. Then they're going to come out on the field and they're going to be like, oh my God, where are these guys coming from? So I expect, and mark my words, in this game, the Rams are going to have a big play on special teams. I don't know if it's a block field goal, a block punt, a punt return, or a kick return. They're going to have a big play on special teams. It's going to lead them to a big first half. Maybe at the end of the first half, it may be at the start of the second half, but it's going to be the play that separates the game. I think the Rams win this thing 31-10 because I think the Rams' offensive line is much improved. I've been giving a lot of crap to Havenstein over the last year and a half. 2 years really. Even his rookie year when everyone was high on him, like, well, he's breaking down on plays he shouldn't. Havenstein has really learned a lot from Whitworth and has looked great in a Ram uniform this year. And Whitworth, in turn, has also made other Ram players who've been here look even better. I don't like the fact that Brown is out. I do like the fact that Cliff Averill is out for the Seattle Seahawks. I do like the fact that Sullivan is back and the Rams seem to be okay, or he seems to be okay, and that the Rams' offensive line is playing as well as they are. I think Jared Goff is going to have a good game. He's going to continue to be the maestro to this orchestra and continue to dump the ball off when he needs to and throw the lasers when he needs to and move the ball. Cooper Kupp at Eastern Washington licked his chops whenever he played quality Division I football teams. And this is the first time in his pro career that he's sitting there going, that's Earl Thomas. That's Richard Sherman. I think he's going to tap into his inner Eastern Washington and really have a big game. I think Todd Gurley's obviously going to have a big game, both through the air and on the ground. I think Jared Goff is going to have a big game. But I think the Rams' defense is why this game's a blowout. I expect turnovers. I expect this first half to look a lot like the Indianapolis Colts game in the first half. I just don't know who Seattle gets the ball to on offense. Doug Baldwin is an overrated wide receiver. He had 94 receptions last year for 1,100 yards. He's overrated. He's the only guy that they go to anyway. And I'm sorry, but you can lock up Tremaine Johnson on him and shut him down most of the game. Maybe they go to Jimmy Graham, but the Rams have enough. Wade Phillips will stop that as it's happening. I just look at this game from the big picture, and you know me, I'm honest. When my team sucks, I say they suck. And when my team is good, I say how good they are. But when I look at this football game and I see a broken down Seahawks offensive line, no running game, no wide receivers to speak of, just Russell Wilson. And then on defense, I see an arrogant, cocky football team that hasn't looked good this year to their own standards and to anyone else's standards for that matter. And I sit there and go, Todd Gurley's better than DeMarco Murray. And he killed him. You know, Marcus Mariota is better than Jared Goff right now, but Goff's playing at a high level right now. I could see the Rams winning this game 31-10, 34-14, something to that effect. I think it's going to be a blowout. I think the Rams go to 4-1, and I think they send a very loud message to the league. Because what really irritates me is when they beat the Colts, it's, well, they played a JV team. But when the Seahawks beat the Colts, it was, oh, look at how great Seattle's offense has finally woken up, and look at their defense, how great they are. When the Rams beat Dallas, I heard Damashek actually utter the statement, I think we're going to look back at this at the end of the year and go, Dallas really wasn't this good, and the Ram game proved it. Not the Rams are really a good football team, and the Cowboy game proved it. And I'm just like, there's always a reason the Rams win. There's always a reason. The 49ers, they didn't talk about the win. They talked about, well, the Rams defense gave up 39 points. Is their defense really that good? I mean, they had to score the 49ers who couldn't score on anyone. No one was going to give them credit over those two games. But they looked good in Washington coming back from 20-7. They were down 24-13 at Dallas and beat them, which I think is a signature win. But you beat Seattle and Dallas in consecutive weeks, the media's darlings, and you start to shut a lot of people up and get a lot of people to jump on your bandwagon. Some people are already, but you're going to get a lot more. That's my analysis. I think the Rams have some strengths, and the Seahawks have some glaring weaknesses at those very positions the Rams are strong in, and that's problematic. E, take it away.
Well, I think you're going to see this game close to the first two quarters and the Rams pull away in the second half. And I say that because I think you're going to see a lot of Quinn and Donald impose their will on that Seahawks offensive line, which is going to get Russell Wilson scrambling, which is going to get him to make bad decisions. And yeah, you can put Tremaine Johnson on Doug Baldwin. Doug Baldwin had a great week last week. And you're right. Who else are they going to throw to? Listen, Jimmy Graham's been non-existent in that offense since they traded for him. Jimmy Graham needs a quarterback who can get him the ball, like literally get him the ball. Seattle runs the ball a lot. Now I see a lot of Seattle passing in this game because I don't think Thomas Rawls or Eddie Lacy is going to have much impact on the ground. I know Lacy did decent last week. With Chris Carson out, that takes a big weapon off the field for the Seahawks. They're injured. Wilson is going to be running quite a bit for himself. for his sanity, for his life. And like I said, I think the Rams pull away in the second half. Sherman may cover Watkins, but he's still going to get a few catches, put up 50 or so yards, which is okay. Robert Woods is going to have a better game. You might get some catches by Higbee, but it's going to be the Todd Gurley show on offense. And again, Goff can't turn the ball over because Seattle will cash in on those turnovers depending on where the turnover occurs. If Seattle ends up selling for field goals like they did in Week 1 against Green Bay, there's no way heck they win this game. So I see the Rams scoring, a few touchdowns in this game. Not going to give a final score. I mean, this game can be anywhere between 7 and 10, maybe a little bit more. But I think you're going to see the Rams put a statement game out here, like you mentioned a little bit earlier. Big division game. The Rams have owned the Seahawks the last couple of years, playing them even when they were 4 and 12. They played the Seahawks tough and they beat them. So the Rams are a lot better team than last year. Goff is much more poised in the pocket this year than last year. And the Rams are gonna take this game away, and they're gonna come home with a W on Sunday.
Yeah, I watched a lot of Pete Carroll over the years, from when he was in New England to New York, and obviously USC and Seattle being here in Arizona. And I see similarities in his teams at this point every year, which is why I mentioned what I did. I'm not going to go on a Pete Carroll rant. I can't stand him. I think he's an overrated football coach who benefited from a really good GM and, got dumb lucky that the NFC West was as bad as it was for a long time and that the 49ers fired Jim Harbaugh. Because I don't think Seattle would have had the success they did if Jim Harbaugh had stuck around. That's just me personally. But what I will say is that you do have to give credit to the Seahawks GM for building the team that they built. But this is the problem when your team takes on your coach's mentality. And I can tell you, it gets old on players after a while when it's constantly rah and complain. What I can't stand about him more than anything is his sideline antics. He gets this crap-eating grin on his face when his football team gets away with something, and then when his football team actually gets called for what it's doing on the field, he loses his chocolates. You think about somebody like a Bill Walsh or a Mike Ditka or even a Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick's a bad example. Bill Parcells would get animated on the sidelines. But when his team was getting the benefit of calls and then the next week they didn't get those calls, he kind of toned it down a bit because he knew, well, we shouldn't have gotten those calls last week or maybe in the first half. Although he did get pissed off at officials when there wasn't consistency. And that's any football coach. I don't have a problem with that. But, the overexcitement on the sidelines when his team does something that they didn't earn is what really, I think, rubs people raw when it comes to him. But I bring that up because for me, the most impressive Ram this season has not been Jared Goff because I knew Jared Goff would be better this year. And one interception, and only one interception this year is impressive. But what I've been impressed with is McVay. At 31 to come in and capture the team, to get their mind right, to change the culture, to change the dynamic, not having a first-round draft pick, not getting guys on defense that they needed, getting the offensive guys that they did, and turning them into real players. I think, to me, the most impressive Ram this year has to be Sean McVay. Eric, who is it for you?
Well, I mean, you make a good point on McVay. Obviously, he's going to be the first, if not the second person you look at. But for me, it's a rejuvenated Robert Woods. I had afterthought in Buffalo because they prefer to run more with McCoy. And thought he was going to be the number one guy. Then Watkins gets traded to the Rams. But I see Robert Woods like a little kid out there on Christmas. He is all over the field making tough catch after tough catch. Obviously all wide receivers drop balls, but Robert Woods to me is exactly what the Rams need. They have that veteran wide receiver who can help with the offense. But then when he gets involved and he's making those catches, making blocks downfield, opening up holes for Gurley, he is completely a different player than last year in Buffalo. And I think he is really happy that they have more of an open offense, because he was lucky to get even 5 looks his way in game in Buffalo. And now he's getting 5, 7, 8 catches, went over 100 yards a week or two ago. Yeah. So Robert Woods, to me, is that Ram.
Yeah. Well, and it's nice because he's back home. He wanted to be a Ram. He wanted to be an LA Ram, and he loves playing in the Coliseum. He's back at his old stomping grounds. That's a really good pick, and it's a smart pick because I do think he gets overlooked. And I brought up Pete Carroll because I was bringing up Sean McVay. I want the fans to understand that. I think, Eric, think about what we're talking about, though. Right now we're talking about the Rams going 4-1, Seattle and Arizona going 2-3. I mean, you're talking about rapidly approaching the midway point and the Rams having a 2.5-game stranglehold on the division. And, by the way, they would be 2-0 in division play. I mean, do you expect the Rams, I know I do, but do you expect the Rams to pull away from this division by the midpoint? Like, can you see the Rams possibly wrapping up the division with 4 weeks to go type of situation? Or do you think things will balance out later?
I mean, we'll pump the brakes. Let's not get ahead of ourselves here.
True.
No, all seriousness. The only thing that is standing in their way, 2 things: themselves and injuries.
Yeah.
A lot of these players haven't been there before. Okay? So, when they start facing adversity, and they faced adversity once already this year with the Washington game, and they were down trying to come back in the fourth quarter. To me, right now, this team has to have a lead going into the fourth quarter to feel comfortable. I'm not saying they can't come back and have a dramatic fourth quarter comeback victory. That's not what I'm saying. But again, when you win 4 games the prior year, the whole winning mentality isn't there right away. They have to learn how to do that. And now, if they beat Seattle, they have just tied their win mark from the previous season.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Which is going to be huge. Which is going to propel this team to new heights. So could they wrap up that division early? Yeah, absolutely. But I don't think McVay is going to let them. I don't think he's going to let them just say, "Oh, hey, we got the division. Now we can kind of ease off." No. There's more at stake. Yeah. You want teams to come to your house in the playoffs. So if the Rams can get more than one home game, that's going to be huge for them.
Yeah.
Then that winning mentality starts taking place. Then in year 3, when Goff has a lot more confidence, has the same playmakers, and hey, if they re-sign Sammy Watkins, that's going to lead to bigger and better things. Again, injuries take its toll. I get it. Okay? No team is immune from injuries. But what they just have to realize, and I know it's simple, they have to take one game, one play at a time.
Well, I'm glad.
Execute. They just need to execute and continue to improve. That's all you can ask for. When you go 4-12 the prior year, and if they turn around and they go 12-4 this year, I mean, that is great. But they're not. They're still a work in progress.
Oh yeah.
They're not that complete team yet.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing for me. You said one game at a time. That's something Todd Gurley's mentioned now twice. They talked to him after the 49er game, and he said, "You know what? We got to focus one game at a time. Next is the Dallas Cowboys. We're going to whoop up on your boys," he told Michael Irvin, which I love. And then they did. And then they were talking to him again Wednesday after, or on their off day, Tuesday. And Todd Gurley was walking around with Marshall Faulk, and he was saying, I know it's cliche, but yeah, we just got to focus one game, one team at a time. And now the attention turns to Seattle. And the Rams are taking that approach. For you old-time Ram fans, I'm going to throw something at you. This Ram team reminds me a lot of the 73 and 99 Rams. In 73, the Rams were 12-2. The year before they were 6-7-1. In '98, the Rams were 4-12, and then of course they went 13-3. Now I'm not saying they're going to win the Super Bowl. I think it may be more like the '73 season than the '99 season. Although I would love for the '99 season to happen. Wouldn't LA lose their mind if the Rams won the Super Bowl? But I think realistically, when you look at it, I think you could see similarities here in the sense that the Rams know they're good. The league isn't taking them seriously, and they're looking up at the Rams going, where did these guys come from? When did this happen? And they just keep on winning. And if they go to 4-1, there's not a lot of 4-1 teams in the NFC West, or not in the NFC West, but in the NFC period. You have Green Bay going to 4-1. I don't. I have Detroit going to 4-1, and that's about it. Philly 4-1. You have 3 teams at 4-1. Atlanta's on and off. It has a bye week. You got Carolina losing this week, actually. Me personally, I have Carolina and Dallas. So I only have 1 4-1 team. 2, if you count Philly, and Carolina, and then the Rams. That's 3, but that's it. So, and I think of those 3, I think the Rams are probably the most impressive. I'm not saying I'm not impressed with Jared Goff, because I am, but I just think that this Ram team is better than a lot of people thought, and right now they're a game better than I thought. I had the Rams at 2-2 at this point, and then this was going to be the game that would skyrocket them, to a 6-2 stretch or whatever it was, 6-1 stretch. I actually had the Rams going 10-6. Now with the Dallas win, I'm going, well, it looks like 11-5 may be the record. And they pick up another win against a Houston or somebody I didn't expect them to beat. We could be talking 12-4 like you're talking about. So I think that's important. And I think we could both agree that Jared Goff is really looking great, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's a lot more comfortable in the base system than he ever looked with Fisher. I just don't think Fisher had the type of playbook or the confidence in Goff to just unleash him. I'm not saying McVay is unleashing Goff, but hey, you know what? Goff is getting that consistent 200-plus yards a game. He doesn't need to pass for 300 or 350. When you have Todd Gurley on your team, man, just hand the ball off. Let him do the work. Play action pass. Let your wide receivers go up for that ball. Woods has done a great job at going up for the ball and catching it at its peak. Watkins is there too. He'll get hits. Goff has become an all-around good quarterback right now, and he's only going to get better.
Yeah, he is really, I don't have a Ram to compare him to, except his accuracy. It's looking more and more like Kurt Warner's accuracy. In that '99 season, no one knew how good Kurt Warner was. He just lit up the scoreboard every week and lit up defenses every week, and that's what we're seeing Jared Goff do. And even in defeat, he's lighting up defenses. Yeah, he had the one bad pick against Washington. That's also been his only pick of the season. There's a reason I was high on this kid, and there was a reason I wasn't jumping all over him like everyone else was, but there's also a reason why I'm not going to sit here and bang his drum and say he's arrived, he's legit. It does take 3 years, and he's got 1 more year to learn under this system. Overall, Eric, I'll wrap up with this. What is when you look back at this team, before we talked, did you see the Rams in this position legitimately, or was it until you started watching them play that you were able to go, this team is for real? I see what you're talking about, Anthony. Because you know me. In years past, I've told you the Rams are going to suck, and they sucked. I told you the Rams are going to be good, and then they're bad only because of stupid situations at the end of games that, they blow a lead or whatever the case may be. But by and large, I've been pretty accurate on predicting my team's seasons. And, last year I had them picked to make the playoffs, and then Jeff Fisher happened. This year I've got them picked to win the division, and so far so good. But you've known me for the long haul. So what can you tell the fans about when you came to this point? Because you're on the show every week now, but you weren't in the summer. And I know you watched some Rams preseason games. So when did your light bulb turn on with this football team?
The light bulb turned on actually week 1. And I didn't think the Rams were going to be this good. They've actually exceeded what I thought, how I thought they were going to be in 2017. Do I think with a healthy Andrew Luck that the Colts would have beat the Rams? No. Do I think the Rams would have put up 46? No. Not at all. So, some things broke the Rams away, but hey, they can't control what happens to other teams. They can't control the schedule. Okay? They can only play what's in front of them. And they've done one heck of a job in taking that schedule and saying, okay, who's next?
Right.
With the slight hiccup against Washington. Washington's been a good game. Washington's been in a lot of games. They played Kansas City tough.
Yeah.
They flamed out against Philadelphia, but Washington isn't a team to overlook. So I mean, if the Rams and Redskins played again in the playoffs, Anthony, you and your wife might have to split up for a week. Like you live in the apartment, she lives in the house.
Yeah.
Because I'd be curious to see how that leading up to that game would be. But all kidding aside, they have surpassed my expectations already after the first quarter of the season. Goff has really impressed me, as any quarterback would, as far as going from year one where he looked like he could have got benched after the first two games that he played in. But the Rams had to keep throwing him out, seeing what they had. Gurley didn't look like he wanted to be out there running and playing a little timid. Of course, he didn't have a great offensive line to run behind, but they seem to have the same type of offensive line they had last year. Just there's multiples for him to run it. So what difference a year makes, and what difference B coach makes.
Yeah.
So I was curious to see what 31-year-old head coach Sean McVay would be able to do with the Rams. And McVay, even though he's a rookie head coach, reminds me of one of those old veteran baseball managers who comes into a new team and it's like, you know what? We're going to instill a new culture here at what we do. We're going to change some things, practice a different way. And that's what I think McVay did with the Rams. And he's brought a winning culture. He had success winning as an OC in Washington. And he's got his Kirk Cousins now. And he's got a better running back than he ever had in Washington.
Yeah.
Wide receivers are, I don't want to say even. I'll give the edge to the Washington receivers that he had last year. They're both 1,000-yard receivers, but I think Woods can get there. I didn't think he could get there at the beginning of the season because I watched how he was in Buffalo. Watkins can get there if they get him a little bit more involved, but it might be another year for him.
Cooper Kupp may get there.
Involved a little bit more, and you have about 5 or 6 different playmakers on that team. And I know I'm forgetting a wide receiver, and I didn't mean to leave out Cooper Kupp, but he's another guy who could even reach that 1,000-yard mark.
What do you? So here's my last question for you. How different does this 3-1 record feel than last year's? Because I know for me, last year it was all smoke and mirrors. Like I knew, I knew we weren't that good, and I was hoping for an 8-win season somewhere along the way. I mean, and you knew me. I mean, you guys watched my show last year. You know I wasn't sitting here pounding the drum on the Rams being 3-1, especially after I went to the LA game up against Buffalo. When I went to that game and they lost to Buffalo, I knew it was going to be, and then the Detroit game, and I'm like, oh dear Lord, we don't have many chances left to win. So, yeah, it hasn't been easy. But what about you?
Yeah, it's a completely different feel. You can just in the stats alone, just in the body language alone, you can see a big difference between the two teams, last year's and this year's.
Yeah.
This year's team has a little bit more swagger to it, and I mean you see what Gurley's doing. He's a completely different running back this year than he was last year, and he just seems to be having more fun. Which when you're having fun, winning is second because it's going to come almost naturally to these guys.
Yeah.
Because when he's running last year, and they're losing here, losing there, and he's taking out of the game because they're trying to catch up, and they're passing the ball, and Goff's passing for 120 yards, and throwing a pick, throwing another pick, and this year it's completely different. And what a difference a year makes.
Yeah. Ain't that the truth? All right. Well, that's it from LA Rams Central. We got the Rams going 4-1, boys. I hope you agree. Make your comments down below. For you old timers that remember the 73 Rams, tell me if you think I'm on pace or if I'm on track. Another thing that I've always said is Todd Gurley reminds me so much of a young Lawrence McCutcheon, who was also having a great year in 73 for the Los Angeles Rams that year. So let me know if you agree with both the 73 thing and who Todd Gurley reminds you of, if he reminds you of Lawrence McCutcheon or not, for the old LA Rams. Thanks, Eric, again. Fans, thanks for watching. Keep the subscriptions coming. We're up to 920. I want to get that sucker over 1,000 if we can. And that's a wrap for LA Rams Central. So go Rams!